Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Story here is Ole Miss, and as I said, I think it is as disappointing of a loss as any I think that we've seen in all of college football this year, because you go back to September and October when Vandy beat Alabama, when Arkansas beat Tennessee, when Ole Miss lost to Kentucky. We didn't know what the stakes were. We do now, and the Georgia win put Ole Miss in position where everything was ahead of them. We're going to talk about Indiana in a minute, but I think if Ole Miss had won out, there was no argument to me that they were going to be in that playoff. So to have the bye week, still not show up ready to play, it is devastating. It is crushing. And I'll just ask you a very simple question. Did Lane Kiffin just miss his best opportunity that he's ever going to have at Ole Miss to make a real shot, make a real run at a national championship? And listen, I'll be honest. These next few minutes, my take is going to be the same take that you've heard from everybody who talks about and loves college football for a living, okay? Because sometimes the obvious take is the right take. Ole Miss was all in on this year, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's the portal era. It's the NIL era. Use the resources that you have. Ole Miss has done an incredible job building up the program and building up the collective and everything that they do at that school. At the same time, we know it was at stake. Coming out of last year, what did we know? We knew they had a third-year starter in Jackson Dart at quarterback. They were coming off a 10-2 regular season, an 11-win season. First time in school history, by the way, that they won 11 games. And so they knew they were elite on offense. And they knew on defense they had to take a step up. And they used the portal. They used NIL. They used the current structure of college football to help rebuild that roster. Walter Nolan transfers from Texas A&M. Jimbo Fisher is fired. He's the number one player in the portal. Everybody wants him. He ends up at Ole Miss. Princely Umamian. I have the kid's name written down. I can never say this poor kid's name right, and I do actually apologize for it because I actually practiced. I think I have it as Umamli Ellen. Princely Umamli Ellen transfers in from Florida, okay? You have Chris Paul from Arkansas. And so I solely bring it up to say that they went all in on defense because they knew the offense was great. And then the most important part, which everybody knows, but the schedule broke their way. And I know that every year the schedule is going to be a little bit different in the SEC, but look at this Ole Miss schedule. No Texas, no Tennessee, no Alabama, no A&M in a year where A&M is actually pretty good. You do have to go to LSU, but listen, everybody's going to have to play somebody on the road. But you get Georgia at home. Oklahoma is usually pretty good, at least a preseason top 25 team. You get them at home. It was all right there for Ole Miss. And so to see it blow up with a third loss, there is no excuse. And I think it is, again, as disappointing of a season as you could possibly have. Because at the end of the day, listen, if you're a college football fan, if you're a college football historian, you know, with Ole Miss, it's just not that easy to be in this position. I know that it's a little bit of a different SEC. And I know that we're in the 12-team era, the NIL era, the portal era, okay? But this isn't LSU where every coach, whether they're good or not, basically is going to be able to put together a roster good enough to win a national championship. This isn't Ohio State. This isn't, I would say Florida. Like Florida, the reason we were so critical of Billy Napier is because we've seen two coaches in the last 30 years win a championship there. That's not Ole Miss. And I just wonder, is there ever going to be a better window than this year? Third-year starter at quarterback, Jackson Dart. That's just not going to happen very often, period. We know 2 out of 3 years it's not going to happen, and that's if you even get a guy in early enough to kind of win the starting job. On top of that, you look at the way the portal broke their way. Listen, I'll say this. We're going to start talking a lot of portal these next few weeks. I think the portal recruiting, I think is going to be a little bit de-emphasized these next few years because there's going to be fewer players once the COVID waiver of eligibility expires. And oh, by the way, this portal cycle specifically, there's not going to be any real coaching changes. And so if there's no coaching changes, where are all the players going to come from? Most of the best players in the portal every year come from schools where the coach got fired. And so I don't think it'll be that easy to rebuild. You're never going to get a better schedule than this year. Next year, by the way, you're going to have to go to Georgia. You're going to get LSU at home. You're going to, all those games at home, and you still went 9-3. And I think the disappointing thing, it's like Alabama. It's not just that you went 9-3, or you're going to go 9-3 if you beat Mississippi State. It's that you went 9-3 with that schedule, and you lost 2 games that you just should not lose. You lose to Kentucky. Listen, I'm sorry. I think that disqualifies you. We'll get into a conversation in a minute about what the playoff picture could look like here going forward. It's hard to argue that if we even get to 3-loss SEC teams, that Ole Miss, which will have the worst loss out of all of them, should be in the conversation. That's the frustrating part. It's not that you're even 9-3, it's that you lost to freaking Kentucky at home. It's that Florida, you were a 10.5-point favorite. I want to give Billy Napier credit, but also you beat yourself. You had more total offense. You had all these crazy turnovers. You went 2 for 4 on 4th down. By the way, everyone talks about Jackson Dart's helmet. Everyone talks about Jackson Dart's 3 interceptions. How about the fact that his helmet came off the play before a crucial 4th down that you didn't convert? Okay, so it's like you just think about all this. I just don't know if it's ever going to get better for Ole Miss. I've made the point. I don't need to keep going, but it's crushing. And again, we will get into what the playoff picture looks like after we talk Indiana and after we talk Texas A&M. I don't see a pathway for Ole Miss, and I'll take it a step further. I think this was Lane Kiffin's best window. I think he botched it, and I think every Ole Miss fan has a right. The pathway was there. The schedule was there. Again, it's like what we just said about Alabama. If you lose at Georgia and at Bama and you get if that's what happens, then yeah. Sometimes you just lose to better teams, but you lose to Kentucky at home. You lose to Florida on the road. I know Florida's improved, but that is just a crushing way to end the season.